Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show we have Jen Sanasi, Will Foxley, Zach Seward. Welcome to the show, guys, and let's start off with a bit of a celebration. Bitcoin soaring past 55K today. Pretty exciting stuff. Any thoughts, Zach? Price movements? We always like talking about the number when it goes up, don't we?
I just like having fun staying poor. So price movements have no bearing on me. I'm just here covering the industry day in, day out.
Just here to report the news.
HFSP from me. So I'll pass it to one of you bag holders. Will, you're mining Bitcoin right now. How do you feel? Huh?
I wish I was mining more. That's all I'll tell you. I don't have much more to say besides that. I think like October, that's funny how that always happens. September, they always say it's a Rectober or Rectember, and it always happens like year after year. September is really bloody. And then for whatever reason, October, just everyone's really happy again. I don't know. They like the fall. And so the price goes back up.
Yeah.
And so
it's a good question to wonder. Sorry, I was just going to say it's a good question. What is driving the rally? It could be recent news from SEC Chair Gary Gensler. So, Zach, I'm going to throw this off to you for our first story. What happened there?
Could be indeed. Yesterday, Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, had a marathon hearing on Capitol Hill. He was in a House Financial Service. Sorry, can't talk. He was in a House Financial Services Committee hearing, and he got peppered with a ton of questions on crypto. Kind of revealed this lingering fascination among U.S. lawmakers around the regulation of crypto and recent steps by the SEC to rein in the crypto industry within the United States. The headline here was, hey, the ban's not up to us, it's up to Congress, it's up to the lawmakers. And I think the markets saw that positively and could be responding in turn. Should we assume that is the impetus for the recent surge in Bitcoin's price? But a lot was shared here beyond just that top line takeaway. There was all sorts of stuff about the regulation of exchanges, about stable coins, all sorts of stuff that lawmakers on Capitol Hill asked Mr. Gensler, and he offered some very revealing comments in return. So I'm going to throw this to Naomi. Actually, I mean, I think this captivated a lot of interest yesterday. Our colleague Cheyenne was able to break down some of what was said. What stood out to you from this hearing? Beyond the no ban comments, was there anything that caught your eye?
I mean, it's interesting that they're talking about not banning it. It's like, well, okay, because it's not your purview. Of course, the SEC wouldn't be banning this. Their job is to make sure there's transparency, and the even playing field is not up to them to decide, winners and losers in terms of which financial products should be banned or not. But this isn't the first time that a government department has mentioned banning or not banning, rather, when it isn't even their purview. We've had the Federal Reserve mention a couple of weeks ago, I think, we're not going to ban it. It's like, okay, yeah, we know, this is up to Congress. So it's interesting. There's a lot of rhetoric about not banning it. So does this mean that someone's about to put forward a bill into Congress about banning it? Is this what this is leading to? Because it all sounded very strange to me. I have some other thoughts as well, but just on that note, Zach, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, the Congress people, they want to know. So this was in response to a direct question from Representative Ted Budd, who is a Republican from North Carolina. He said, reiterating a question, so no bans that you're interested in implementing via the SEC, as China has done, really to funnel everyone through their own digital currency, alluding obviously to central bank digital currencies and talk out of Fed Chair Jerome Powell that something like that may be in the works for the U.S. So it was in response to that direct question, in which Gensler said, no, quote, that would be up to Congress. So top of mind, the news, especially as it relates to China and Bitcoin and its recent crackdown, seems to have filtered to some of the lawmakers on Capitol Hill, at least in this House committee. And Gensler was asked for his thoughts on the matter directly. So it's interesting to see this question and answer format really yielding some interesting takeaways that reveal some of the thinking behind a key force in the U.S. regulatory scene. Will, I saw your hand up, and then we'll kick it back up to Naomi for some other thoughts.
I want to jump back onto what Naomi was saying, that all these institutions were asking if they're going to ban Bitcoin don't have the ability to do it. It's not in their legal purview to say, oh, you can ban this or ban that. That private property exists and you can't just ban code. That's also free speech. So it's interesting to see that question pop up. It's also interesting to see how that has a market response. It's very clear that Bitcoin went up a lot today. And the only thing I can kind of think about is, well, a lot of people saw this headline and said, oh, the US is taking a more positive stance and they won't ban Bitcoin. It kind of crumbles my faith a little bit. Yeah, I know. Don't take that fully in there. But to a degree, you can say like there's some correlation there. And you talk about like if you look at the picture writ large, you're wondering like, do that many people believe that Congress can just create a bill or the SEC can just create a regulation that would wipe something off the map like Bitcoin, which is just a digital currency? I understand that securities laws interact a little bit differently, and that would get more into the token questions, and that would be under SEC purview. But just looking at the larger picture, it just seems like there's a lot of confusion over what our government is able to do with digital currencies. Naomi, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I did see Jen with her hand up as well, so I'll throw to her first. Off to you, Jen.
Okay. Well, it was interesting just reading the transcript of what happened yesterday, because I find that Gary Gensler always is presenting problems, and I hate to be the person that says this, but no solution. So it's like the problem with stablecoins is this, and it needs to be regulated. The problem with DeFi is this, and it needs to be regulated. And yesterday we spoke about Hester Peirce's solution, and that never comes up. And so while I was reading this, I was thinking about the safe harbor proposal and how it would bring so much clarity to the inner workings of the products that we're thinking about. And maybe we don't end up at the result that Hester Peirce predicts, but I think we'll end up in a place where we have so much more clarity, and maybe the end result is very different than all of us are thinking. But I think it would be such a great starting place, and I am so upset that it didn't come up yesterday. But Naomi, I'll pass it back up to you.
Yeah, absolutely second that. I will mention some other things that Gary brought up. He talks again about stablecoins as this systemic risk to the economy, and we can dig into that. But yes, of course, because when they say, it's a systemic risk, like to what system is this a risk? It's to the status quo. It's to this, established financial system that, yes, Bitcoin is disrupting majorly. So it's not like, it just seems like this platitude, like it's a systemic risk. It's like, yes, and the government is really fighting against it, and people who want financial sovereignty are really fighting for it, right? And the other thing he brought up, I'll just mention quickly, is about DeFi. He once again reiterated that we are going to be trying to regulate DeFi. He was talking about the fact that we have these, centralized protocols. They don't take custody in the same way, but he thinks that this could be a place that we could get the maximum amount of public policy, which again is crazy because, as Will brought up, code is free speech, right? So are they going to be starting to regulate developers who write these platforms, when they're not even taking custody of funds? They're not money transmitters. They're not under the purview of a lot of these, financial regulatory institutions. So are they going to start cracking down on coders now? There's a lot of big question marks brought up from this hearing. But Zach, I'll throw it to you for final thoughts before we go on to the next one.
Yeah, really bearish remarks, I think, on DeFi and stablecoins, especially right on the heels of CoinDesk reporting that, that Circle USDC issuer had been hit with an investigative subpoena. But in defense of rational markets theory, sometimes I'm not a huge fan of that. He did have interesting remarks on Bitcoin in response to a question. He said, quote, Bitcoin is a highly speculative asset, but it is a store of value that people wish to invest in as some would invest in gold. So somewhat of a tepid endorsement. So maybe the market saw that as a signal and acted in turn. But very interesting to see this unfold. Continues to be a major storyline that we're watching. We are going to wrap this segment here, and we are going to toss it to Jen. Take it away, please.
All right. So speaking of solutions, A16Z has made 4 proposals to Congress on how to regulate crypto with decentralization top of mind. So on Tuesday, the VC firm outlined key issues with regulating DeFi, including consumer protection, decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, regulatory fragmentation, and tax reporting. Naomi, I'm going to kick this off to you. We talk so much about solutions. Now we have VC firms entering the space, offering their insights on how we can look at regulation in the space. What did you think when you read this article?
We're going to have lots of people making proposals. We already had Coinbase putting forward their proposal saying this is how it should be regulated. You got A16Z, who's a big investor in so many different companies. it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, you want people in the industry making sure that regulators don't regulate this thing out of existence. It seems right now to be a struggle for survival in the crypto industry, especially on the heels of Gary Gensler's remarks that we just went through. So it's great that we have industry participants speaking up and say, here is a better alternative. I love that. Let's also keep in the back of our minds that these are very large companies. They're very large VCs. They're investing in products. They are probably putting forward proposals that will be beneficial to them. There's this term called rent seeking or regulatory capture, which is the idea that firms will lobby for certain rules that will be to their benefit to the detriment of maybe smaller players or competitors. You know, you have like even you had Jeremy Allaire talking about this 2019, I believe, in the hearings about DM Libra at the time, where he starts talking about, well, maybe we should have custodians in this space. Maybe we should have these third parties who are the ones who are mandated to be the custodians rather than everyone custodying. You know, maybe we should have these designated providers. Obviously, that sort of stuff is like, okay, so who's that going to be, Jeremy? Is that going to be you guys? Are you guys going to be the custodians? Is that what you're getting at? So there's lots of like questions. Maybe he wasn't thinking that. Maybe I should, you know, give him more slack there. But we do have to be cognizant that these places will be putting forward proposals that are going to benefit them. Let's hope that it's at the moment just beneficial to everyone in crypto. As I said, it's a fight for survival right now with regulators really cracking down hard. But Zach, I saw you're nodding away. I think your hand went up, so I'll throw to you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I want to throw a corollary term in there, and that term is my bags. And A16Z has the largest bags in the industry. They're invested in so many of these projects. They're holding so many of these tokens. It would only make sense that they would need to speak up for their self-interest in this case. And I think the intent and the hope is right, is that their interest aligns with other small users in the space who may also see the promising and potentially revolutionary potential of some of these technologies. So it is great that there's someone with a little bit of skin in the game who's voicing this, but you know, the double-edged sword of the crypto adage, skin in the game, is conflict of interest. And if you're not seen as an honest broker trying to shape this regulatory conversation, it may be detrimental to that entire push. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, and if A16Z can really find that right balance to be sort of a trusted voice when it comes to having these conversations with powerful DC figureheads in the political sphere and in the regulatory arena. But I'll kick it back up to you, Naomi.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention on that comment, Zach. I do want to grant these companies and these VCs a bit of slack in this. I really do want people from the industry speaking up. And right now, we have seen a lot of goodwill. We have seen people banding together, hopping on the same train, really fighting for the same things. And this has been a very positive result of this very tight-knit crypto culture that's managed to evolve, where everyone is, you know, against overreaching government regulation, for this freedom of money that cryptocurrency offers. I think that it's up to the community as well to hold these companies accountable when they start putting these things forward. If we do find bad things in it, that it's like, come on, like this isn't for the benefit of crypto, this is for you, you know, call them out on it. It's from this tight-knit community that we really can hold companies to like maintaining that integrity that we've seen for previous years. So it's also up to us being vocal in this industry. But Will, I'll throw it to you. I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of comments that you guys haven't kind of gone over. I guess my concern just mostly because Naomi's, you don't want the railroad industry creating laws for how railroad industry should work, because then you have a lot of complications on both sides, and those railroad companies get entrenched in whatever they're doing in the ways that they have it, and you can't have new entrepreneurs pop up and disrupt the space even more. We've seen that over the last few years with Amazon. They've kind of circled around Capitol Hill, and now there's a lot of problems kind of getting them out of defense contracts and other issues like that. So when we see like these proposals from crypto companies, it's not shocking, and the industry has been calling for regulation for years now, which a lot of people I just don't think know that. But you know, we're going to see more of these come out now, just like the Coinbase one. Jen, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think the more minds, the better, right? I think that companies can make these proposals, regulators can look at them, hopefully objectively. People can weigh in on them. I didn't mention in my intro that the report was filed in response to a call from U.S. Senator Pat Toomey to solicit ideas and legislative proposals. So I'm sure other companies participated in this as well. But I agree with what everyone is saying. I really think just the more minds, the better. Let's get some ideas out there. Let's educate regulators, because regulation isn't going anywhere. So maybe we can come to some kind of happy medium that works for everyone.
Sounds good. Very fascinating to see A16Z really take up the torch, and someone needs to do it to have these conversations. So good to watch. We'll see what happens. But we're going to take a break. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to talk about George Soros. George Soros has a little bit of Bitcoin now. Okay. All right. Cool. We'll talk about that after the break. Stick with us. It's The Hash. It's Wednesday. We're just glad you're here. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Hash. We're going to dive into some interesting news coming out of the Soros camp. So apparently, according to CIO Fitzpatrick of the Soros Fund, they are investing in Bitcoin, which is kind of news. Apparently, the family office owns some Bitcoin. And in an interview with the Soros Foundation, the Soros family office, the coins themselves are apparently less interesting than the use case of DeFi and things like that. That was something that I wanted to dig in this piece. Soros traditionally has not really been a big Bitcoin fan. It's kind of a mixed review. I remember, I think it was 2017, he's calling it a tulip bubble and saying like this price is way too inflated, agreeing with a lot of other people on the day. And it's interesting to now for them to turn around and say, well, sure, we got some coins, but the coins are interesting. It's, the potential. It's the DeFi. It's things like that. It's like, yeah, that's what people were betting on in 2017, that they were seeing this potential. Like, it's so interesting to see these giant offices who are meant to have their eye on the ball and be seeing new trends and what's going to be, future. And a lot of people were seeing Bitcoin as the future of finance. And this is a tool and, the foundations for this decentralized financial wave that we're now seeing now. And it's interesting that the Soros Family Fund didn't see this at all back then. It was like, this is a bubble. This is completely not a representation of any real value. And now they're turning around. They're like, well, there could be some potential there on the DeFi side. It's like, okay, welcome to the game, Soros. But there's some interesting comments there. We can also dig into some of his other history of things that he said as well. But Will, what are your thoughts on this and Soros getting involved with Bitcoin now?
Yeah, we saw that he had made the two investments in NYDIG and Luca earlier this year. And I think that was notable just to talk about like the Soros name and brand is huge investing, and it put a stamp of approval, not necessarily on cryptocurrency itself, but the firms behind cryptocurrencies, which I think should be kind of segmented. Those are two different entities. But the fact that the Soros brand was on those firms just spoke a lot to where the industry was moving. And then holding the coins itself, like you can't speak more of it than that, especially just holding Bitcoin. Of course, we keep seeing like this tagline kind of going around about like we're more interested in DeFi than Bitcoin itself. All the while, Bitcoin is spiking right now, and the Bitcoin economy is growing leaps and bounds. Lightning Network, for instance, has grown a tremendous amount this year, which is kind of the Bitcoiners' answers to a lot of these Ethereum tactics like DeFi or layer 2 solutions that you see on Ethereum. Doesn't mean those things with Ethereum don't matter, but you do see that Bitcoin is surging right now, and other applications on Bitcoin are also doing better than they were previously. So it's interesting to see those comments kind of rolled out again for everyone to see. It reminds me a lot of the blockchain, not Bitcoin comments, even though I think very two different camps. Stuff that was like blockchain, not Bitcoin back in 2017, 2018. Those things didn't really stick around at all. I do think DeFi is here to stay for the most part. But I'm seeing a lot of similarities between those two comments over the years. Naomi, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, just it's very interesting how we get these news bites and we kind of forget history, things that have happened before. So 2018, Adam Fisher, who oversees the macro investing and the New York-based Soros Fund Management, actually got internal approval to trade cryptos. So this isn't like a new thing. Apparently at the time, it wasn't confirmed that they'd actually made any trades, but apparently, according to internal sources at the time, there was approval there. But it's also interesting that at the start of 2018, they were also buying $150 million worth of shares in Overstock. Now, if you think about what Overstock was doing like at that time, they're the first giant company that is accepting Bitcoin at their stores. They're, starting to do this pivot to becoming this full like crypto company. And meanwhile, Soros is buying heavily into that. So there are some interesting signs there that perhaps they were more involved than we realized. But Soros has, he's been very negative on all of this and really focused on the dangers of cryptocurrency rather than the benefits. So Soros had said that, dictators turn to Bitcoin to build investments abroad, and basically kind of said that this is a tool of these dictatorial regimes only. It's not really beneficial to ordinary people. And, it's kind of interesting to me that now they've changed their tune and they're public about owning Bitcoin. Maybe they're starting to realize that it's a tool for freedom. Like, this is a neutral tool. Yes, it could be used for bad people. Yes, it could be used for good people. The technology is neutral, and this isn't something to say, well, I don't like Bitcoin because it could be used for bad. It's like, well, it could be used for tremendous good. They're starting to recognize that, especially in the DeFi world. So I think it's always important to keep that balanced view whenever you're discussing any sort of technology. But Zach, I'll throw to you.
Yeah. All right. Mainstream figureheads. I think it's really interesting to see. There is a bit of a phenomenon in the space right now where, people and companies who have established great reputations outside of crypto, like in the traditional economy, sometimes that brand cachet translates into the world of crypto in a way that it shouldn't. Right. I'm a mega bank, and I spun up a crypto research unit last week, and I'm producing a report. Doesn't necessarily mean that report is going to be especially nuanced, spot on, incisive, or to be valued that much. And I think when I see headlines like this, I'm quick to think about that and the lessons that sort of I've seen examples of this over the past years covering this space, where it's like, these new entrants to the market are fascinating, are really important for a lot of things and a lot of people, but sometimes the cachet that they carry elsewhere does not translate to the cachet that they should be granted in the crypto space until they get their feet wet a little bit more. So when I see stuff like this, I think about that, and I don't know if any of that made sense, but that's just what came to mind.
I got you. I followed you.
Yeah,
we're
following. We're following, Zach.
That was great.
Thank you.
That's some insights. That's why you watch the hash.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
For the hot takes.
It was a bit of a mess. All right.
No, let's talk about messes. Let's talk about Huobi moving out of China, which is a mess, and it's an unfortunate mess for them. So Huobi is one of the older exchanges based out of China, but they are not based out of China anymore. They're quickly rolling back all their investments and employees in that region, moving out of the area. I think back in December, they applied for a financial license in the US, but someone can probably fact check me on that. Regardless, they're moving out of China, and it's affecting the futures market for Bitcoin. And at first glance, you'll be like, oh, why do those things have a correlation? Well, what we're seeing on chain and from data itself is that Huobi, which used to be a very big indicator for where price was moving, just because there was a lot of traders using that exchange for its liquidity, are now changing how the futures market for Bitcoin looks, which then affects how the spot price of Bitcoin also moves. So looking at this report from Moya Shen, we see actually wrong reporter. I have not seen her yet. Lila. How do you say it, Zach?
Lila.
Wow.
Lila. Yeah.
Moya's always on the on-chain data, so this was a little rug on me.
Lila's good.
There we go. Anyways, Huobi is only accounting for about a 5% move in the Bitcoin futures price compared to Binance or OKX's 10% move in Bitcoin futures price over the last little period here. And that's while Bitcoin's price has been going up. So typically, if you see Bitcoin's spot price go up, you'll also see Bitcoin's future price increase more so. Can't give you a percentage, but you typically see it move a lot more. And it's not happening with Huobi right now because they're moving out of China and there's a lot of regulatory pressure and they're losing a lot of liquidity to other exchanges like Binance and like OKX. So Zach, going to throw this one to you. Pretty interesting to see that we have like the meat space interactions affecting the price of Bitcoin in this particular instance with this exchange.
Yeah, this is a really great entryway to a bigger story, and I think this is really well done. I think the story of Huobi right now is quite interesting, right? I mean, they bet on the wrong horse ultimately. They said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to be we're going to orient our business around being available, present, and easy for mainstream China users." The cards didn't fall in their favor, and I think they saw that was happening. They moved people to Singapore, they moved people to other places, and it's just really fascinating to see this play out in terms of price data, I think. I remember meeting with, a Huobi representative like in Davos or something in like January 2020. And, they were sort of gearing up to make this big push to have like sort of a public figurehead and to, really rival Binance in capturing the Asia region, which remains a huge opportunity in the crypto space. And for the context to change rather drastically on them over the past year or so is just a really interesting business story to me, I think. And I think that being able to tell that through price data is a really great vantage point on what's going on with that company as they recalculate what they're going to be in the market. So yeah, that's the thinking there.
Yeah. So I'll take it up again just to talk about Binance. Actually, I have a question for you, Naomi. I want to segue into really quick here. So if we're looking at Binance are dominating the market even more so if Huobi kind of slips, and maybe OKX kind of moves into that airspace that Huobi has kind of vacated. But it's interesting to see Binance continue to be dominant. I'm also wondering about like the decentralized finance aspect of this. We saw DeFi exchanges really take off over this last year, but in terms of like volumes versus centralized exchanges in Asia, I don't have data in front of me, but my feeling is that these centralized exchanges are still going to dwarf DeFi exchanges at the moment. So wondering how that kind of plays out over the next 5 years, if it even really matters that Huobi is kind of disappearing because centralized exchanges themselves are going to be eaten up later by protocols. Naomi, I'll give it to you though.
Yeah, I think the decentralized finance question is a big one. I'm wondering which direction China is going to head in. I mean, right now, we really don't have a replacement for the fiat on-ramp to get into cryptocurrency that centralized exchanges provide. Currently, DeFi is fantastic. I think that things like Thorchain are going to take over. There are lots of different alternatives to Thorchain that are being developed as well. But I think that the crypto-to-crypto element is definitely going to have DeFi replace centralized exchanges, but we haven't figured out the puzzle piece that is, how do I get my fiat and turn it into crypto? And for Chinese users, it's a very difficult question. I think a lot of them will be, for trading, will be using DeFi. But these people also want to just get their money out of, the national fiat. They want to be getting into crypto, and it's just, exponentially harder for them now that China is cracking down. I'm not sure what the solution is, and I know there are different companies working on types of solutions, but because traditional finance is such a rigid and tightly controlled infrastructure, it's very, like, if they want to ban this stuff, it's very easy to. It's very hard to create a parallel financial infrastructure that deals in this fiat currency, because you by definition you need a counterparty, so you need a centralized entity, and once you have a centralized entity, it could be targeted by governments. Like, you can't really have a decentralized way of laying these these pipes for traditional finance. You have things like BISC, which are awesome, and they kind of provide a kind of decentralized alternative. You have spin-offs. I think it's Havana for Monero, and there's another one for Ethereum, where the underlying transactions are made in these different currencies. But again, liquidity is very low on these. It's very cumbersome. But if the Chinese people don't have any other option, I wonder whether these things will start to take off more. I wonder whether companies will, really start to invest in getting the UX better and just getting rid of that friction so that these things can be more usable for people in countries like China. But I'm just not sure how much better they can get. But Jen, would love your thoughts and maybe a final take on all this.
Yeah, I don't have any thoughts to add to what you were saying, and I just want to end the show on a happier note. So, Will, I would like to show you the pie charts in this story
Oh, there we go.
as an example
great
of
charts.
how to create pie charts. Easy to understand, colorful,
Did you
easy
make
on the
these
eyes.
charts?
Much different than the chart that you showed us, I think, last week. So, no, I did not, but I happily
Don't
endorse
take credit
them.
for it. Okay, that's Jen's approval. Noted data scientist. Appreciate it.
I just know
Would you
that
have anything
Control
to add
has.
about the charts,
I just-
Jen? Was
I
that
know-
just
Control
a jab
better,
at
dude.
Will?
Control better have Will's chart locked and loaded so we can see a compare and
The
contrast.
chart was
okay?
easy to.
No.
It wasn't
She-
overloaded
my
with
gosh,
information.
oh my
It was
goodness.
easy to
It's
see
been
what was
trashed.
going on
It's
there.
terrible. Well,
Okay.
we respect your chart game, Will. It's good stuff. All right, let's take a break. Let's take a 23-hour and 30-minute break, and then we'll reconvene tomorrow after we all lick our wounds from today's show. Tomorrow's show will be the Thursday show. We sometimes call that the Friday light show, and that's a good time. So stick with us for that. This has been Hash, brought to you by CoinDesk TV. CoinDesk.com, all sorts of news. Is a great follow-up piece from our colleague Cheyenne, who just broke down some more of the Gensler comments in a way that's really accessible. 6 key takeaways. If you want to sound smart, again, at the cocktail party that you're going to tonight, if you want to sound smart about what Gary Gensler is saying, read that piece and you're set. Okay, cool. Do that. I'm Zach Seward, Will Foxley, Jen Sanasi, Naomi Brockwell. We're the Hash. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. You have a good one. All right.
Bye.
Peace, guys.
See ya.